I'm doing just as well. Good morning.
Hi.
We're happy to have all of you listening to the Prairie Doc radio program today. Rick Holm, our Prairie Doc, is unable to be with us, so as Bob just said, we have our guest. I'm happy to welcome his wife, Joni. Joni's a nurse practitioner with the Avera Medical Group Brookings. Joni's joined me today to discuss her recent trip to Nicaragua. She was accompanied on this medical mission by 8 pre-professional South Dakota State University students who are members of the Prairie Doc Assistantship Program.
That's it.
Welcome, Joni.
Hi.
And I see the students are just walking in now, so maybe you want to give us a little history. Would you want to talk first about what is a Prairie Doc Assistant?
Sure. In 2014, we developed a program through the help of Judge Kelly, who's been on the show many times, to bring in pre-professional students to help us with the phone calls that come in during the Prairie Doc TV show. In the past, it's been a hodgepodge of people, that anybody I could find that would answer the phone. This way, we formalized it a little bit, and we feel like it's certainly a benefit to us. We hope it's a benefit to the students as well, because they get to spend some time with each of the medical guests who come each week. So we'll let them talk about that a little bit if they want. And then through that Prairie Doc Assistant Program, the students ask at some point, actually it was in the spring of this year, about doing a medical mission trip. And luckily we knew some people that did mission and made some phone calls and were able to join in with a group that was already planning to go to Nicaragua on a medical mission. And so our students had the opportunity to go along.
Well, it just sounds exciting, and I'm so glad they were able to come in today. I know school hasn't begun yet, so it's very nice to have both of you here. I'd like to introduce two of the students that went with you. First is Sivan Prairie. He's a biology major at South Dakota State, and he hopes to go into medicine. Is that right, Sivan?
That's correct.
Okay, glad to have you with us. And Jalen?
Yeah.
Jalen Atta is also a biology major. Are you interested in pre-med as well?
Yeah, I would like to be a physician as well.
That's great. Well, it's good to have both of you here. We brought all of you here to talk about the medical mission that you had with Joni, and it's just fascinating that we were able to get students from state go with Joni on this mission. But we're going to take our first break, give you all a chance to breathe, and we'll be back right after these words. What do you call your group? The Joni, the
Prairie Doc Assistants.
Prairie Doc Assistants. And the Prairie Doc Assistants are just that. They assist with the TV program that Dr. Holm does, and they get to meet a lot of the doctors that come in. So most of them, are all of them pre-med, Joni?
Some are looking at physician assistant programs, and I don't think that we're opposed to any other
Pre-professional, right.
Right now they tend to be in that arena.
And do you have 10 in the group?
Is that right, guys?
Roughly
About
10.
that?
Yeah, about
Okay, and how many of these students actually went to Nicaragua with you then?
8.
8 students, okay. Well, it
And 2
sounds...
graduates, so add that to it.
All right, well, I'm curious to know, both of you would not have traveled to Nicaragua before, is that correct? Okay.
No.
No, and so what were your expectations going in? What were you expecting? Jalen?
Yeah, I guess I was expecting a lot more, like a deserted area almost, maybe. Not quite as tropical, but getting there, I was very unaware of the landscape in terms of its mountainous features and volcanic activity, which was a large surprise. And so just kind of putting the pieces together down there, it was a lot more wooded and mountainous than I ever could have imagined it being.
And probably beautiful because of that, huh?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Sivan, how about you? Were your expectations different?
Yeah, actually going into the trip, I had a complete misconception of what we were going to be doing. Excuse me. going into it, I thought all of us would be going to hospitals throughout the country and doing basically clinical shadowings, where we go interact with patients and just basic clinical care. But to my surprise, we were actually going to sites off around the city and just setting up shops, essentially, just on the spot clinics, tents and whatnot, and bringing people in from the local community, diagnosing them and trying to treat them over there. That was a surprise to me, but I thought that was a lot better than what I had in mind.
Good.
So your expectations were exceeded?
Exceeded. yeah.
Exceeded, that's great. Okay, what did you think of the food when you got there? Was that okay?
I love traveling and experiencing culture's food. I think it's one of like the beauties of finding a new culture is finding how they express themselves through their culinary like outlets. So experiencing what they use as a source of protein is always interesting. Just kind of see like what the economy best reflects as the cheapest protein. And so meat, although present, was usually, it seemed kind of bony and gristly a lot. But
What type of meat was it, do you know?
It was chicken and beef.
Chicken
but
and
it was,
beef.
You could definitely tell that they did not waste as much as an American culture. The fat and skin was almost always on because that provides nourishment. And then a lot of times it would also be rice and beans. I think we had for every single lunch rice and beans, and then
breakfast.
and then cheese and a banana cooked in every manner that you can expect. It was always good, but it was
Unusual bananas.
Yeah, it was very, very different than what we've experienced in the United States.
Okay.
At our rural clinics, each day the village that we were in would provide us lunch. And I thought that was really neat because the people we were serving were very poor. I mean, you could see that in their homes, in the fact that their education they have to pay for, and we know that their students don't always get to go to school. But they provided that meal to us. And you know, we talk about that we had chicken and beef every day. I wonder if they sacrifice for us.
They may not normally have that every day.
Exactly.
Right?
It was a good meal, and I thought the cheeses were really neat. They were like handmade cheeses of some kind that I wasn't familiar with. I liked them.
Did you find more goats or cows for the sheep? What did you find? What did you see around there?
We saw some goats. The cows were really skinny. I noticed that. The goats had these interesting way to keep them out of the fence. They had a V made out of just a piece of wood. Just a branch was stuck on their neck so they couldn't go through the fence.
Oh, interesting.
So I did
It's
talk
simple?
to some ranchers and they said, oh yeah, that's not unusual, but I'd never seen it.
Huh. Had you been to Nicaragua before, Joni? You have done other medical missions, though.
Dominican, Jamaica, Zimbabwe, and Haiti.
Did you find this mission different in some ways from others that you've gone? Are each one a unique experience, or are they all somewhat the same?
Very unique. I'd say this was, this country, the areas we were in, I guess it surprised me that they were as poor as they were. I thought they might not be this poor. Thinking about Haiti, which to me is the very poorest that I've seen, this wasn't that terribly far off when we were out in the villages. Now,
When
the
you
cities didn't
I was
appear very
wondering,
poor.
when you probably flew into a major city,
Managua.
Managua, and so that did not appear to be poverty.
No.
But when you got out in the countryside,
Correct.
and most of your mission work then was in the countryside.
Yes.
How was that planned out ahead of time?
We were very fortunate that we joined into a group that has gone to Nicaragua every year for many years. Name it for me, guys.
Can you think of the name of it?
Manos Juntas
There you go.
Foundation, yeah.
And that was with a physician that Rick has known for many years, Dr. Boyd Shook. And he had the trip totally planned. So, boy, we just had to jump on board. And he is working with some Nicaraguan doctors. He has sort of taken a doctor under his wings, and she's now in the United States working on trying to get a residency in the United States. So she, I know, was very instrumental in working with the villagers and setting up the clinics ahead of time, so they knew we were coming and
It was all
prepared for
planned
us.
out. When you got there, they were ready for the clinic to set up.
Right.
Okay. Well, we have to set up with our next break. We appreciate hearing about this. I appreciate hearing about this, and I think our audience will enjoy it too. Find out more about your experiences there, and we'll be back right after these words.
Clear.
to be with us, but we have his much better half. Joni Holm is with us today. And Joni is here with two students from South Dakota State University who also work in a program that Dr. Holm and Joni have set up for his TV program initially. And it's they are assistants, Prairie Doc assistants, and they work with Dr. Holm when he does his TV show every Thursday night. That's going to be starting up, is it next week or 2 weeks from now?
28th, 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
28th, 27th, something.
Yeah, I know it's not on tomorrow night, but it's a phenomenal show, and most of our listeners to the radio definitely watch the TV program. But these two, Jenna, if you call in questions on the TV program, you're going to have one of these men probably answer the phone and take your question. But more enjoyable for them, I think, was the opportunity to go with Joni on a medical mission to Nicaragua. And we've been talking about that. Fascinating time. I guess what they talked about off the air was getting lost on a mountain. I'd love, who wants to tell me about it? You both got lost on the mountain.
I'll start now. So, a little backstory is it was 4 o'clock, and all of us had 3 hours to kill. Joni told us to get to the restaurant for dinner by 7. So, Judge and another friend, they decided, hey, let's just go explore the mountain. We found some cool trails for everyone to see. So, we went. And while hiking up the mountain, we decided to go off the trails and just explore on our own. And
Brilliant.
we-
Really brilliant.
We wanted to be pioneers, and we just kept going up. We got what we thought was halfway through the mountain, and just Judge's motivation was truly phenomenal because he got all 8 of us to keep going. And we just kept getting closer and closer to the top, and at one point, everyone was ready to turn around and just go back down. But you hear Judge saying, I found the top of the mountain. And all of us just sigh and grunt as we make it all the way to the top. It was a beautiful view.
You did make it to the top?
We
though.
did.
You
It
did.
was-
A little insight that we're missing out on is we say walking up the trail. It was a lot more like hands and knees crawling up the mud on the side of the mountain through like a rainforest.
And there was a student who had a bad knee, and she had fallen earlier in the week and scared us all, and she's on the mountain.
She
with
went up
them.
too. And of course, about this point, you're wondering, where are my students?
It's getting dark.
Was Julia with them?
No.
Oh, good.
She was wiser.
Much
Yeah.
wiser than us.
Her daughter Julia was also on the trip, and I thought you'd really be a lot more worried if she had been with them, right? You're still worried about them.
It
So
was-
you made it to the top, then what happened?
Trying to figure out how to get back down. Since we went off-road or off-trail going all the way up there, we had no idea how to get back down. We had a map, but we did not know where we were. So we spent a good half an hour trying to figure out where we were on the map and trying to make our way back to the bottom.
Yeah, the map that we were provided with, it doesn't help when your map's not drawn to scale.
That is a problem.
And isn't given any landmarks besides big tree drawn in. So, in terms of a mountain, the map was essentially useless aside from the fact that we knew we had gone on a certain direction. And also, we started out at about 4, and so the hike up the mountain, I think, probably took us about an hour or so. And due to just where we are geographically, the sun sets at about 5:30.
Oh, you were in trouble.
Yep.
But due to the fact that we're in the rainforest, it's dark at about 5 o'clock. And so it was getting darker, and we're at the top of the mountain, and all climbing hands and knee up a mountain was slow, but going down the mountain that way is significantly slower.
Oh, I'll bet. My good. Was there a former Boy Scout, a Girl Scout in your group?
Years ago.
Years ago. Did you
But
bother
it's-
bringing a compass with you?
No.
No one had a compass.
They did.
Did you have water with you, I hope?
We did. Some of us did.
Some
Not
did.
everyone, so we had to share.
Okay.
I'm thinking nobody had a flashlight, but they had cell phones. So
Cell phones would light it up.
We definitely used flashlight apps on our way back down.
Well, you had to.
Yeah.
So you were up there about 5:30. What time did you actually make it back to camp?
7:30?
Oh, my.
Joni just sees all of us coming in covered in mud and sticks, all tired, and just, it was a
Yeah.
fun sight to see.
On the way down, there was unfortunately a large fig tree that had fallen over one of the trails that we were fortunate enough to find, and the tree was probably 100, 200 feet tall,
Oh.
and probably a good 25 feet around, and it fell over the trail, and it was
You had to climb over that to get on the trail, is that it?
It was really you had to go around it,
Oh.
and unfortunately we don't know our flora and fauna very well of the Nicaraguan rainforest, and unfortunately some of the trees looked very inconspicuous but were very thorned.
Oh.
And
Yep.
you don't know they're thorned until you grab them to support yourself going down the mountain.
In the dark.
In
It
the
was
dark.
too dark to see if they
And
had thorns.
that was a mistake that you made about once or twice before you went about hands off and everything, and you just sat down in your rear end and scooted down the mountain.
Yeah. You all have to thank Judge for that, don't you?
Yeah.
For sure.
He took good
I'll
care of you.
make sure to remind him.
Yes, daily, I'll bet, daily.
There were tweezers out the next day with a lot of people pulling
Oh.
tweezers out.
So the biggest adventure you had was really getting lost in a mountain, although I would think the medical mission was a major adventure for you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Joni? Working with these young people, did you find it different than other times when you've gone and you didn't have young people to be worried about?
Yes, and I didn't really worry about them except for that one experience. And I have to be honest, there was a little bit of more frustration than worry. You know,
Where are they now?
And then trying to play the stern leader, which I'm not real good at doing that, but they knew I was upset.
Somehow you got through that day.
Yeah,
Well,
we did fine. It's water under the bridge.
Yeah.
well,
We
once
knew-
again, we're talking with students that traveled to Nicaragua with Joni on a medical mission trip. And since this is a medical show, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to talk about the medical aspects of this trip. And we'll be back right after these words.
Clear.
Prairie Doc Radio, I'm Joan Hogan, and I have Joni home in the studio with me, and two young men who traveled with Joni, along with 8 or 10 others, to Nicaragua on a medical mission trip. We've been talking with Siobhan Bouari and Jalen Otto. And Joni, you were going to talk about the medical aspects.
Right. One thing that the students were really important and instrumental in was helping each day with essentially the pharmacy. Dr. Shook had planned the medications ahead of time and had purchased and brought most of them with us to Nicaragua. But then as we set up in a different location every day, the students immediately took over after some instructions on the first day, and then it became pretty much their arena to work in the pharmacy. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about what you did there?
All right. Well, the first day was a little bit more chaotic than the other ones. The first day, everybody was kind of in charge of counting out prescriptions. All the pills just came in the probably largest pill bottle forms that you can find, 1,000 to 5,000. And we were in charge of distributing them out to the correct pharmaceutical, like the dosage and labeling, and then the correct number of pills. And then afterwards, we would then put them in larger bags and set up however we could, like a range of tables to create something like a pharmacy counter where they were all lined up where we could find them. And so then it was me and Siobhan's job. We were sitting there behind the quote-unquote pharmacy counter and deciphering the prescriptions and handing them out to the patients, or having one of the women from the village usually was there to help translate for us, because a lot of these terms are far beyond what you learn in your typical high school Spanish class education. So it was kind of a job between a translator and a student to interact and get the point across of what each pill is, so they know what they're for and when to take them and how many to take a day, and just kind of a learning experience of how to best go about doing that without any formal pharmacy training. And I think Siobhan could probably expand on that a little bit more.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, Jalen and I, we were our makeshift pharmacists distributing pills, and one of the most fun and challenging parts about that is with the stereotype, doctors having not so good of handwriting than everyone else. It was fun getting a prescription and just looking at the word and talking to everybody, just asking, what does this say? What does this say? And then trying to find the doctor. What did you write down? I can't find it. That was really fun.
What did you guys learn that was prescribed probably 99% of the time?
Vitamins.
Vitamins.
And albendazole.
Yep.
Correct.
And what is albendazole?
It's an anti-parasitic drug.
Oh.
That and vitamins were pretty much given out to
Everyone.
every single person.
Right.
Wow.
Because of the nutrition not always being adequate and the problems with the water and the parasites that are pretty much rampant for the people in the country. And so they try to do a treatment for parasites at least twice a year. And so pretty much asking the patient if they had it recently, and we didn't get into a lot of symptoms, we just asked if they had had the treatment recently, and if they hadn't, they got it. It didn't hurt them to take the albendazole.
Did you have some unusual medical cases come in while you were dealing with them, Joni?
You know, surprisingly not too many. And I think because, well, A, the people are healthy, they're busy, they're working. And if they had more unusual things, they would probably have gone to a clinic or hospital. But for our clinic, it was the routine. It was the vitamins, the albendazole. The only thing that was unusual for me was I had a lady that I'm pretty sure had malaria from her symptoms. And I hadn't ever worked with that, so I just took the symptoms in and asked Dr. Shook, and he said, yep, sounds good, treat her for malaria, and move on. Yeah, not something that I've dealt with. There were 5 providers, and I got to work as a provider, and then the students did get a chance to shadow all the providers as well. So along with their pharmacy duties, they could sit in and listen to what was going on with each of the providers.
Shadowing.
Oh, go ahead.
Shadowing was a great experience with that. Like us students, we'd sit with Dr. Holm or Dr. Shook, and seeing them try to figure out what's wrong with the patient while having a translator alongside them, just trying to figure out basic symptoms, like someone came in with heartburn, and we just give the proper medication for that, or asking if there's any other problems. And it was a very quick pace, but it was very efficient too. Just seeing Dr. Julie or Dr. Shook essentially, diagnosing on the spot with our limited supplies what we had.
Right. We didn't have any diagnostic tests. We had stethoscopes. I borrowed an otoscope so I could look in kids' ears. I tried to see mostly kids, although I ended up seeing adults as well. But it was mostly their symptoms, and like Siobhan said, we had translators, and I was fortunate that my niece got to go along, and she's fluent in Spanish, so she acted as a translator. So that
I was
fun.
curious about that translation because most of your students are not fluent in English, the ones that came with you, right?
In Spanish.
Spanish, I'm sorry. I hope they're fluent in English.
Yes.
It's
Right,
fluent
so-
in Spanish, but so this doctor, when he organizes this trip, has enough translators ready for the trip?
Right. 3 of the providers were Nicaraguan, so it was really
Oh,
just
that
2
helps.
providers.
You
that
only
we
needed 2
definitely
providers.
needed help with. And with my niece along, and Judge had a pretty good handle on Spanish, he could help. And then one of the staff members that came, or one of the volunteers from Oklahoma was fluent, so she could help. Because this foundation is set up in Oklahoma, and Dr. Shook works there and has a free clinic every Saturday there. And so he brought along 5 volunteers as well as our group. So it was a large group.
It sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We rode around in a big bus, and that was another thing. To be honest, the guys were extremely helpful with, because all of the luggage and medications were loaded to the top of the bus every day. So had it been Dr. Shook, who was in his 80s, and some of the other volunteers, we would have struggled with that. So it was very helpful to have our
Have your
strong
help.
SDSU students along too.
As long as they weren't lost on a mountain,
Yeah.
they were very
They
helpful.
could load
They
the
were
bus.
very helpful.
We're always thankful at the end of the day that we left about 20 or 30 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
With
medication.
That helps.
medication off. It's putting it back up on the bus is a little bit.
Exhausting,
Less
I'm
fun.
sure. Yeah.
Now, we did get to go to a beach. I'll mention that.
You
and see
did.
if the students want to say anything about that day.
That was probably my favorite day. For sure. I mean,
It
that's-
wasn't muddy.
Oh no. I mean, dealing with rainforest, mountains. It wasn't nearly as muggy. Just going to a nice beach. It was a good time to relax. Going in, I've been to the West Coast before in California, but I felt like the Nicaraguan coast was definitely much different. I'd say the riptides were definitely a lot stronger.
Very
Because
strong.
all of us would go in, all of a sudden we would like float 10 feet out farther into the ocean as the waves grew.
Waves are
And
very
that's- yeah.
strong as well.
Yeah, I've never seen waves as large as I did there. They were coming in. I mean, I'm 6'2", and they're coming in maybe 4 feet taller than I am.
That's a big wave.
It's a big wave.
Everybody stayed really close, and the students did a good job. Nobody ventured out and was crazy. We didn't go
That's good.
further than waist deep, and
Did you just find the beach on your own, or was it a public beach, or?
It was a public beach.
It was.
And it was part of the plan for the day after we did a clinic. Then we
Okay.
got to see a volcano, and unfortunately, where a volcano had taken out a town, and they had a memorial. That was quite interesting for the lost lives. And then we got to spend the afternoon at the beach.
And you said there were 3 providers who were native Nicaraguans. Are they medical doctors or nurse practitioners? Who were they?
Medical doctors.
They are. So there is some background of medicine there that
Yes.
people will work. These doctors normally work in the city and just take breaks to come out, or?
That's what I understood, because we did go to the rural villages and the patients came to us. We were set up in either a church or a home or a community center of some kind. And so that environment didn't see medical providers on a regular basis, is my understanding.
Okay.
And so they were able to come to us, and with the 5 providers, we saw quite a few people every day.
Well, that's great. And so it felt worthwhile the time that you were there, I would guess. How about you guys?
Yeah, it was definitely
think so.
very worthwhile.
I'd do it again.
And
You would-
I am a believer that part of the trip is the cultural immersion for us. There's a lot of discussion on mission and how much money's spent, and we could spend the money at home, and I agree with that. On the other hand, I think seeing another culture, seeing the poverty and seeing the way they live, I come home more humbled. I come home appreciating my water that is clean and fresh, and our health environment where we can be treated as needed. So I think that's an important aspect.
Sounds like it is. I'm also curious to know, what do you think you'll miss the most? Or what have you missed the most coming back? Did you miss any, once you're back home, what do you think? Or did you miss things when you were there? Peanut butter? No.
Peanut butter, definitely. But I think one of the major things that I missed after like a day or two was the interaction with everybody. After 2 weeks of being with a group of people 24/7, you become very, very close, tight-knit group that's always working together and building friendships and teamwork. And then you come back and you come to your house and you're by yourself, and it's a sense of loneliness that's like immediate because you've been just together working hard with people and doing this for so long, and you come back and you're just by yourself and you're like, well, now what?
Yeah.
Nothing to do.
Quite a bit different,
The
huh?
bonding that occurred.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, I'm so glad you took the time to come in today. I know that you obviously have a busy schedule. I know Joni does, and it's very nice of her to be here, but she's always happy to help Dr. Holm. I know that with his
Yes.
program. And we hope all of you've enjoyed our Prairie Doc radio program. As always, you can hear more from Dr. Holm online at prairiedoc.org, where you may also learn more about the exciting activities of the Healing Words Foundation. The 10 members of the Prairie Doc Assistantship Program are all pre-professional students at South Dakota State University. This program is one example of the works of the Healing Word Foundation. Please join us next week. Dr. Holm will be here, and we'll be discussing diabetes with Bev Cotton. I think a lot of you in town know who Bev is, and she's worked at the clinic, I believe. Is it the hospital or the clinic?
She's at the hospital.
She's at the hospital, and so if you're interested in knowing more about diabetes, we'll discuss that next week. My thanks to Joni Holm, Siobhan Barari, and Jalen Otto for joining me today. Joni, that's all for this week.
Thank you, everybody, and I'll use Rick's words, stay healthy out there, people.
We're clear.